Hey, and welcome back to another video. So today's video is a special video because it is the 10-year anniversary of the iPhone 4S. Yes, the iPhone 4S was announced exactly 10 years ago on October 4th of 2011, and there's a lot to talk about this thing in terms of history. If you want a somewhat recent review of the 4S, I've already done a video up here. I did that video in 2019, but that is up to date because this phone has not got any updates after 2019. So that video is still relevant, so you can go watch that if you like. However, we're going to go over all the history and everything related to the iPhone 4S, mainly history, but I'll also talk about some of the specs, and we'll have a camera test and just go down nostalgia lane with the iPhone 4S here in 2021. And as always, before we jump right in, don't forget to smash that like button as it helps this video get on YouTube's algorithm. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and ring that bell notification button to get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'm on Instagram, Discord, and Twitter, and you can follow me on those using the links down in the description below. Alrighty, now let's jump right into this video. So for starters, the iPhone 4S was announced exactly 10 years ago to the day on October 4th, 2011, and it was released on October 14th of 2011 to the public. And this phone is very special because it is the last iPhone that Steve Jobs worked on, and it's the last iPhone that was announced while he was still alive. However, he did not announce it because he was in a bad state on the 4th of October, and actually he passed away on October 5th, 2011, just a day after the iPhone 4S was announced. So may he rest in peace. He was one of the greatest contributors to the mobile phone world, the computer world, everything, portable music players. The portable music player industry is dead now. However, it was a key part in the early 2000s, and without the iPod, we wouldn't have had that portable music industry get pushed to a newer level. Phones wouldn't exist today the way they are, or even if they did, they would have been delayed a certain amount, if not for the original iPhone. Also, Macs, the original Apple I, Apple II, etc., and then Steve Jobs leaving Apple and then coming back in the early 2000s, and all of that. He just played a major role in the mobile phone industry and the computer industry over the course of his lifespan, whether you like him or not. And a lot of people don't like Steve Jobs. He has his faults. Obviously, he had a lot of faults. I believe the movie with the Ashton Kutcher, the Jobs movie, they kind of blew it out of proportion there. They kind of painted him in a wrong way to a certain extent, but he had his faults. But you should, whether you like him or not, you have to agree that if not for him, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we have today in the state that they are. Anyway, he passed away on October 5th, just a day after the iPhone 4S was announced. So it was the last iPhone that was developed with him, and the last iPhone that was announced while he was alive. The iPhone 4S is also very special because it's the first iPhone with a dual-core processor, the Apple A5, which we'll talk about in a bit. And all the iPhones before it, the iPhone 4, the 3GS, the 3G, and the 2G were all single-core processor phones. The Apple A5 is also the second in-house designed processor by Apple, because the iPhone 4 was the first with the A4. And everything before the 3GS, the 3G, and the 2G had Samsung designed processors. So the A5 is the second one designed by Apple, and it is the first dual-core iPhone, the iPhone 4S. The 4S is also known for the first iPhone to be able to compete with Nokia and the other brands in terms of camera performance, because the iPhone 4 could not even come close to the Nokia N8 and the Nokia N9 and stuff. There is no comparison. However, the iPhone 4S brought about an 8 megapixel shooter designed in-house by Apple. That was the first iPhone that had a capable camera capable of competing with Nokia and the other brands, because the Nokia N8 and the iPhone 4 battle. Sure, the iPhone 4 was faster, it had better software, it had better games, better apps and stuff, but the N8's camera completely blew the iPhone 4 out of the water, because the N8's camera even today still holds up really well. However, the 4S came along and was the first true iPhone to compete in terms of camera performance with all the other brands, and everyone started taking Apple's camera seriously with the iPhone 4S. The 4S is also the last iPhone to use Apple's 30-pin connector, because the following year, the iPhone 5 had the new Lightning connector. So the last iPhone with the 30-pin connector. And most importantly, coming to the end here of the history portion, sort of, it's the first iPhone with Siri. Siri was introduced with the iPhone 4S in 2011, and it replaced that really basic voice command thing that the 4 and the 3GS and stuff had. The iPhone 4 never got Siri, however. That was kind of strange, but with the update, with the software updates, the iPhone 4 never got Siri. However, the 4S was the one that was introduced with Siri. So as you see, it still works somewhat today, ish. It's completely, well, I wouldn't say it's dysfunctional, but it's outdated, so it's not even comparable to the modern day Siri, and this thing is running iOS 9. But yeah, that's just something to know. A few of the first and last key points of the iPhone 4S. It was the last iPhone announced while Steve Jobs was alive, and the last iPhone that he worked on. It was also the last iPhone with the 30-pin connector over there. It was also the first iPhone with a dual-core processor, and the first iPhone to really compete in terms of camera performance and show that Apple also is a serious contender in the camera department. And of course, it was the first iPhone with Siri as well. So that's just a bit of history on the iPhone 4S and how it changed the market in a way. Its design and everything is exactly the same as the iPhone 4. Let's have a quick go around of the design. So up front, we have our sensors up here. We have our ear speaker. We have our forward-facing camera, 3.5-inch display, the old school home button, no Touch ID or anything like that. That all came with the iPhone 5S. Why did it take a screenshot? Oh, the software is lagging. Okay. On this side, we have our SIM tray and our bands, the stainless steel band with the antenna bands. Up top, 3.5mm headphone jack. We have a microphone over here, power button over there. On this side, the amazing feeling volume rockers. Even today, they feel just amazing. We have a lock switch. We have a profile switcher. We have a profile switcher over there, and we have the band and more antenna bands over here as well. Microphone and speaker, oh, I probably got those two reversed. Either way, one's a microphone, one's a speaker. 30-pin connector, the last of its kind. The back of the phone, iPhone branding, some information over there, designed by Apple in California. Apple logo, the camera and the flash, which we'll talk about in a bit. This thing also came in white and black, and a lot of people went for the white iPhone 4S. The iPhone 4S was mainly popular in white for some reason, I don't know. The iPhone 4 also was shipped in white. However, as I remember, the iPhone 4, there was a shortage of white iPhone 4s for some time because of the pigment and stuff. Because under the glass and all that stuff, they had to deal with a color issue there. But the 4S, when it shipped in mass numbers with the white and the black color as well. And people who probably could not get the iPhone 4 in white ended up getting the 4S in white. Hence why the white 4S is more common than the black 4S. And for build quality, again, it's like an iPhone 4. It's a tank. It's solidly built. The stainless steel band feels premium. This design still holds up today. Hence the iPhone 12 lineup and now the 13. They were based off this design. I mean, they were technically based off the iPhone 5, but the iPhone 5 was based off this, the square boxy design. It never really gets old. Glass front, glass back, stainless steel band. Easily one of the best built phones ever. And well, if you compare it with the iPhone 4, the iPhone 4 was the phone that set the golden standard for phone design ever. Without the iPhone 4, other companies wouldn't have been pushed to make their phones out of better materials and then better use of glass and everything. So the iPhone 4 seriously set the golden standard for phone design back in 2010, and the 4S continued that. Anyway, that was just a bit of history and the design and build quality of the iPhone 4S. So the display on this thing is your old school Apple 3.5-inch Retina display. It's identical to the one that was on the iPhone 4. They didn't do too much in the way of display improvements from the iPhone 4. It was just slightly brighter than the iPhone 4's display, but that's about it. So the same pixels and the same pixel density, basically everything's the same as the iPhone 4. 640 by 960 pixels with a 3:2 aspect ratio and a pixel density of around 331 pixels per inch. It has Corning Gorilla Glass, probably of generation 2. I'm not sure. They have not really mentioned that. I think it's Gen 2. And it has a scratch resistant coating. Perfectly decent display for 2021 if you can ignore the fact that the rest of the phone is really outdated. This display does hold up really well even in 2021 for an LCD. I've seen worse LCDs from some modern budget phones than this. It is also, like I said, extremely bright, and its outdoor performance is just really nice. The colors are accurate. They're not overly saturated. It was just the best of the best that Apple could do back in 2011. There's nothing too much to talk about the display. So let's move on to the software. So the iPhone 4S initially shipped with iOS 5 and was finally upgradable to iOS 9.3.5. However, like you see here, and I've showed this multiple times in my previous videos, in 2019 June, or was it July? I think June or July, the iPhone 4S got a security update. And by the way, in 2019, so that's 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 8 years later, it got a security update, which was iOS 9.3.6. So that's kind of interesting. And it showed that a lot of people still used the 4S in 2019 to a certain extent in some countries. Otherwise, Apple would not release that update. And my previous video that I showed you, the iPhone 4S in 2019, that video actually, when I looked at the comments, there were a lot of people saying that, hey, I still use this thing. And some people were using it as their secondary phones, and some people were actually using this as their first phone, and maybe they were not really interested in apps and they were minimalist people, and they had their batteries replaced and used this. So that's kind of interesting to see that such an old phone was being used. But Apple definitely released that update because it was still being used by some people, and it was a security update. So as you see here, this is your old school iOS 9. It has slowed down quite a bit, and I use this phone mainly as an alarm clock. So let me show you. I have my alarms here. Sometimes it wakes me up, sometimes it doesn't. This thing, I use it because it's really loud, and it has that really loud alarm sound, and I'll play that a bit later to show you that kind of like a nuclear reactor alarm, like beep, 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 that really rustic alarm. I like it from this speaker because it's really tinny and it wakes me up pretty easily. But the days that I'm really lazy, that even does not work. But still, this is my designated alarm clock, and I've said this before. So old school iOS 9, nothing much to see here. Some of the apps still work. Facebook still works. WhatsApp, I have not used it, but it still works. Messenger and stuff, they work to a certain extent. But again, you must understand that these things are very slow now, and they're out of date, and they'll crash, and it's just old stuff that you shouldn't be really using. I see you have some errors. I think there's an update that needs to be updated. YouTube sometimes loads, but it also doesn't load on other times, just like this. But yeah, that is just basically what's the situation with iOS 9 in 2021. But iOS 5 was very different from this. iOS 5 was the 3D icons, but with the update to iOS 7, all the icons went back to flat designs, and that's a topic for a different time because that's also a very interesting topic. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, which is hardware. So like I said earlier, the iPhone 4S was the first iPhone with a dual-core processor, the Apple A5, which was based on a 45 nanometer process, and it's a dual-core processor with each core on 1 gigahertz. This thing also had a PowerVR GPU, SGX 543 MP2 to be specific. So PowerVR SGX 543 MP2 if you want to know the model number. And this thing obviously, like all iPhones, did not have a memory card slot, and it was available in many storage options, which was 8 gigs, 16 gigs, 32 gigs, and 64 gigs as well. And all of the models had 512 megs of RAM. So pretty decent specs for their time. The iPhone 4S didn't need too much processing power to run iOS back in the day, just like all the other iPhones. They had optimization, Apple's hardware and software optimization, which was called vertical integration or vertical optimization. I keep mixing the two up. But Apple had full control over their software and hardware, which made the phone perform really good. It's slow now, obviously, but back in the day, it was the fastest. This one is a 16 gig model that I found in a thrift store. Or it was a pawn shop or a thrift shop? I think it was a pawn shop. I think they're the same thing. I don't know. For like $14, so I bought it as an alarm clock. But as you see, the thing has slowed down over time, but at its time, it was the fastest phone, even though it had only 512 megs of RAM. And the Motorola Atrix, the Galaxy S2, they all had they had 1 gig of RAM and above. I think the Galaxy S2 had a bit more than 1 gig of RAM, but this thing with Apple's optimization worked perfectly, and it was the fastest phone of its time. But anyway, that was just the hardware on the iPhone 4S. Now let's move on to the camera. So like I said earlier, the iPhone 4S's camera was the first iPhone camera to truly compete with all the other manufacturers, and the camera on this thing is an 8 megapixel shooter with an f2.4 aperture and a 35mm lens. It has autofocus and a single LED flash, as you can see there, and it has an HDR and panorama feature as well. It can also shoot video at 1080p at 30 FPS. The front camera on this thing is a VGA camera with a video recording capability of 480p at 30 FPS, and you can video call over Wi-Fi and 3G as well. So pretty decent camera specs on paper for 2011, and the iPhone 4S's camera did perform really well. It wasn't the best camera of 2011, however, it competed decently with all the other manufacturers' phones, and it was definitely a phone to cement Apple's place as a top competitor in camera performance. And with the next year, when the release of the iPhone 5 in 2013, is only when Apple started saying, hey, we are the top two or even the best for a certain amount of time, until obviously Samsung releases theirs, then Apple releases theirs again, and then they keep releasing each other back to back, and they keep comparing. But for a certain amount of time, the iPhone 5 had the best camera of any phone back in 2013, and the 4S is what started to show the world that Apple's cameras can actually compete. Now let's roll some photo samples from the rear camera and the front camera, starting with the rear camera shots during the day, and then video from the rear camera as well, or before that I'll put some selfies from the front camera as well, and then video from the rear camera and video from the front camera as well. The rear camera will be at 1080p 30, and the front camera will be at 480p 30 FPS as well. All rear camera photos will be set to HDR, so everything will be on HDR. In 3, 2, 1, roll the photos. So as you saw with those camera samples, even in 2021, given the proper lighting conditions, those things actually still hold up really well. And so does the video for a phone from 2011 and 10 years ago. Anyway, now we can move on to the speaker demo, and I can play that annoying sound that I told you that wakes me up sometimes. I'm really lazy on colder days, but this thing does a really good job. Now, where is it? Is it this one? I forgot. Nope. Where is alarm? Update, alarm. Why isn't it here? Anticipate. It should be here. It's that really loud alarm sound. It should be under classics as well. Let me check. Oh, here we are. We are under this classics. There we go. Yeah, that's your really annoying alarm sound, and it gets progressively louder, which is really annoying, and that does wake me up on most important days. But that was just a speaker demo as well. The speaker is not that great. It's just a decent speaker. Now, for battery performance on this thing, the battery on this thing for its time, it was decent, but it wasn't the greatest. There were Android phones with much better battery life than this thing. So the battery on this thing is a 1432 milliamp hour battery with a standby time of around 200 hours on 2G and also about 220 hours on 3G. So not much of a difference there. And a talk time of 14 hours on 2G and about 9 hours on 3G. And you could play music straight up for 40 hours. Apple also advertised that music playback was 40 hours straight on a full battery. So that was the battery performance, nothing too major there, nothing too great. There were Android phones that had better battery life back in the day. So for additional features, the iPhone 4S, well, it didn't really have much in the way. The first, obviously, the main thing was Siri, and it had AGPS, it had GLONASS, and nothing too major. Everything was generally software supported. All the main features that Apple advertised this thing was all on the software. This thing had no radio. The 3.5mm headphone jack, however, existed, but you didn't have the radio option either. No iPhone has radio as far as I can consider. Yeah, no, iPhones just don't have radio. That was a feature that certain iPod Nanos had. So if you wanted radio, you had to go for an iPod Nano. And like I said, this thing was available in black and white as well. So really nothing much else to speak about the iPhone 4S. It's just its 10-year anniversary, and it's nice to see how far phones have come in the last 10 years and how even still today the design of the iPhone 4S still holds up, and the camera also holds up to a certain extent. Apple really put a lot of thought into this. And it's nice to see the last iPhone that Steve Jobs worked on before he passed away. May he rest in peace. One of the greatest minds in the tech industry to ever exist. So at the end of the day, this phone is one of the key players in Apple's ecosystem history, and it brought about so many new things. Siri, the Lightning port, and it brought about a lot of things to the iPhone, which was considered new at the time. And I know the argument is there that Android had the stuff before, but when Apple does something, they usually do it a bit better. But at the end of the day, that was the iPhone 4S. And as usual, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please leave a like down below, as it helps this video get on YouTube's algorithm. And also, if you really like this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below and ringing that bell notification button to get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'm on Instagram, Discord, and Twitter, and you can follow me on those using the links down in the description below. Thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next video.